What is up, guys? Welcome back to Overspray. Now, in my community post, if you guys have been following along, you guys know that I'll let you guys vote and see if you guys wanted me to show you how to get the best paint results in your home garage. Honestly, about 80% of you guys had said, yes, go ahead and do it. So in this video, we're going to be going ahead and showing you what I do to prepare my paint jobs, or how to get the best paint job in your home garage. All right, so the first thing is first, expectation. What are you expecting this paint job to really look like? If you're expecting it to have no trash, no bugs, no nothing whatsoever, and have the perfect garage paint job, you're going to be lying to yourself, because it is almost impossible. You got to remember that the environment that you're in to spray a car is not the appropriate environment. So you're going to get bits of trash, dust, maybe a couple bugs here and there. It just really depends. So you got to go with that expectation that it's not going to be perfect. So if you're okay with your paint job not being exactly perfect or 100% perfect, let's continue. All right, so now that we're ready to continue, let's go ahead and start with the heart of a paint job, the air compressor. Alrighty guys, so here is the air compressor that I like to use. This is a Cobalt 30 gallon, 1.6 running horsepower. I think it's got about 6 CFM, or yeah, anywhere between 5 to 6 CFM. So not a lot of CFM, but it does have 30 gallons for me to play with, so it does have plenty of air storage. Now, obviously, you guys know that it's not exactly a pancake compressor. Now, you do want to use the biggest compressor possible, but in this case, I'm very limited to a 110 voltage. So basically, I have to use anything that is a 110, and this is the biggest air compressor I can get. That is a 110 or single phase air compressor. Now, a lot of people think that you can't spray with high-end spray guns with a small air compressor like this, but that is false. I will go ahead and talk about that in a little bit later, but I do want to mention a couple other things about an air compressor. You want to get at least somewhere between a 20 to a 30 gallon air compressor if you're going to be painting more than just a fender. If you're going to be painting a hood, a door, whatever you are going to be painting, you want to use at least about a 20 to 30 gallon air compressor. Along with the air compressor, you want to use a good filtration system. So let's go ahead and talk about my filtration system. All right, here is my basic air filtration system. As you guys can see, I used to use the Harbor Freight, not anymore. This is a desiccant filter, but yeah, I got tired of changing out these desiccants, so I switched over to this MotorGuard M60 air filter. And this air filter honestly does an amazing job. Inside this little canister, there's basically like a toilet paper filter inside, and it filters any oil or water that might be coming out of my air compressor. There's going to be a couple people that are going to debate whether they should get an air filtration system or not. Honestly, this is cheap insurance for a good garage paint job. The reason being that filter is going to reduce the chances of getting fish eyes in your paint job. Now, you got to remember that the air compressor is going to have water, moisture, and oil particles in the air supply line. So that filter is vital for you to get less of a contamination on your paint job. That's going to increase your chances of getting a better paint job, or less chance of fish eyes all over your paint job. All right, so the next thing on the list, let's go ahead and talk about spray guns. So there is a common misconception that you cannot spray with a small air compressor with these high-end guns like this SATA 5000 RP that I have right here. Or even a Techno Pro Light. Now, this is a common misconception, guys, and I just want to rule this out for you guys, or kind of just clarify. All these guns that I use are high transfer efficiency guns, HTE. Now, the difference between an HTE and an HVLP, the HVLP is going to use a whole lot more CFM. Usually, HVLP will be somewhere around the range about 15 to 18 CFM, something around there. Now, with the HTEs, like this Techno Pro Light, it's got a HTE HTE air cap, high transfer efficiency air cap. It's going to use a lot less. You're talking about 10 to maybe 12 CFM. So much lower. Still pretty high, but because I have the capacity from that air compressor, it's going to allow me to have enough air to paint with these high-end guns. Now, depending on your air compressor and your CFM, you might want to use a LVLP that's going to use a lot less CFM than these higher-end guns, but that is going to be a bit slower. I personally don't like LVLP spray guns. I like the HTEs. I try to stay away from HVLPs as much as I can, but that's just, yeah, that's my take on that. I use these guns all the time, never run out of air with my air compressor, unless it's like, you know, I'm painting half a car or something like that. But for smaller parts like doors, hoods, fenders, all that kind of stuff, bumpers, yeah, HTEs are the way to go. They have much larger fan. They are very, very quick, atomize the paint perfectly, and lay down that paint super nice. And not only that, the size of the air compressor helps me compensate for the lack of CFM using these high-end guns. So that's why I tell you at least a 20 to 30 gallon air compressor is going to be vital for you to use some of these high-end guns. Alright, so the next thing on the list is going to be ventilation. Now, air ventilation is usually commonly missed stepped in garage painting. A lot of people use those little box fans. Don't use those. Those are trash. They don't have the CFM. They're really not going to do anything for you. They do have a little bit of paint extraction if you're in a very small, tiny, compressed space, but in a single car garage, you're going to need a lot more CFM than that what that box fan could produce. So let me show you a fan that you might want to use. All right, so here is my upgraded fan from a box fan. This is a drum fan. I bought this at Lowe's for about $120 or something like that. There are plenty of places you could buy it. Harbor Freight has some, Amazon, Lowe's, Home Depot, you name it. You can find a bunch of them. The difference between this and a box fan, well, this one has about 4,000 CFM versus a box fan probably has maybe less than 1,000 CFM. So the CFM is what's going to help you extract a lot of the overspray, extract some dust, and also the fumes that can be collecting inside your garage. So definitely upgrade your fan to a drum fan with high CFM. Like I said, this one has about 4,000 CFM. I think spray booths have about 8,000 to 9,000 CFM fans inside their spray booth, so about half as much as one from a spray booth, but it does the job. Now, a quick tip: if you are painting, you want to stay as close to your fan as possible. That's going to help extract those fumes and that overspray much more efficiently than if it's like all the way across the room or across my garage. It's just not going to work as well. So you do want to have your part pretty close to the fan, or bring the fan a little bit closer to help that overspray just extract almost immediately. All right, so now that we got some of the basics down, let's go ahead and talk about some other things that we all hate in a paint job: bugs. Now, of course, it's going to be impossible for you to get 0 bugs out of your garage paint job, but you can definitely minimize this by 2 ways. Either one, selecting the time of day that you're going to be painting, whether it's going to be in morning, midday, or night. You have that option of when to paint. Now, obviously, the bugs are going to like to come out at night, but you're going to use one other object to your advantage. I'm about to tell you that right now, and that is lighting. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, what do you mean, lighting? You're going to use that to fight off the bugs? What are you talking about, overspray? Well, I'm going to tell you that. The bugs are attracted to your lighting. So you are going to put some bug traps near your lights, because those lights are attracting the bugs, especially at night. Bugs love that fluorescent light. And not only that, they like the aroma of paint. So because you're painting, they're going to get attracted. They're going to see that light. They're going to be flying around and eventually land in your paint job. So if you set up some traps near your lighting, you're gonna attract more bugs in that area or that location. They're gonna stick to that trap and they're gonna avoid getting into your paint job. All right, so now that we talked about bugs, let's go ahead and talk about how to avoid dust in your paint jobs. Of course, you can't expect zero dust in your paint job without a proper booth. Yeah, it's just almost impossible, but you can definitely reduce the amount of dust in your panel or on your panel. Let me show you some quick tips. All right, so hopefully I have you guys in a good enough position to show you a little example of how to avoid dust in your paint job. Now, as you guys can see, this panel is vertical. So with vertical panels, obviously you can reduce the amount of dust that will actually land on your paint job because it is a vertical panel. It is much more difficult for that dust to actually land on a vertical panel than it is on a panel that's nice and flat or horizontal. Another thing that I wanted to note or give you a tip on is when spraying a part, you want it to be off the floor. Now, obviously with the camera angle, it's kind of hard to see how far it is off of the floor, but maybe this will reference just about where the middle of my thigh is or just above my knee. So it is significantly high, and this is for a particular reason. Now let me just show you. Let me grab a spray gun real quick. Alrighty, so when you are painting a panel, let's just say it's a vertical panel, the overspray is going to be going up, it's going to go down, but it also creates turbulence, right? So as that paint is hitting the panel, it's going to be bouncing back and it's going to become overspray, and that overspray is going to cause also turbulence. There's going to be air that is going to be picking up stuff off of the floor and back into the air, and it could land in your paint job. So you want to keep your part as far off of the floor as possible. Now, there's a couple things you can do. Obviously, you can wet the floor. That does reduce the amount of dust in a paint job, but it also raises the humidity. In my garage, it is very tiny, so any amount of water on the floor, it's gonna raise that humidity up, and especially waterborne based paints, it can affect your dry times, your flash times, and also with your clear as well. So I try to avoid wetting the floor, but I will say this, that I sweep it out, blow it all out, blow out the walls, the roof, the garage door up here, especially in those little valleys of the door. Everything gets blown out. I make sure that I have my fan on so that I can extract all that dust out and make sure that I can get the cleanest paint job possible. Now, obviously, when you're painting a horizontal panel, you're gonna get a much more nicer finish. The clear coat can lay out much flatter, but it's going to catch a lot more dust. Because you have such a big panel, such a wide area for that dust to land on, you're gonna have a higher chance of getting dust on your panel. So I wouldn't suggest painting a panel flat unless you absolutely have to. I usually would suggest painting it vertically. And another quick tip, if you want to reduce the amount of dust in your paint job, try to avoid doing your prep work in the same place that you're going to be doing your painting. Now, obviously, this could be kind of difficult, especially for me. I only have this single car garage. That's it. That's all I got. So I have to literally do my prep work in the same place that I paint. So I can't take my own suggestion off this, but I will suggest if you can avoid it as much as possible, do it. It's going to make sure that you're not going to have as much dust as possible, or it's going to reduce the chances of dust in your paint job much more than if you actually do the same prep work and painting all in the same place. Yeah, it's going to raise the chances. So make sure you try to avoid doing your prep work in the same place that you're going to be painting. And one last tip for reducing dust, your activator for your clear. People like to use the fast activator activator in order to lock out some of that dust landing in your paint job. Now, this could also be contingent on your weather, but in those chances where you can use it, definitely use a fast activator. You can definitely get the paint to dry much more quicker, and that's going to lock out any remaining dust landing in your paint job, because that clear is going to dry much more quicker. And since it's going to quickly dry, well, guess what? It's going to lock out all that dust, and that's going to be less dust that you're going to have to sand out later on. Now, obviously, with any paint job, cleanliness is a big factor in your paint job. Now, you want to be as clean as possible. You want to make sure that you don't have much dust on you. Kind of like right here on my shoulder, got a little bit of dust. Imagine if I'm painting and I got a little bit of dust. Yeah, that's going to end up landing in your paint. Also, you want to make sure that the clothes you are wearing is not letting off any lint. I've had previous paint jobs where I was using some sort of sweater. That lint came off, landed in my paint job, and that hair or that lint was permanently in the paint job because I could not get it out. So yeah, make sure that you are wearing the appropriate garments in order for painting. I always recommend a paint suit. There are plenty of them out there. I'm not going to say which one. Obviously, my favorite is going to be the Motivated Painter's one. But obviously, like I said, there's a bunch of them out there. It's all going to be your choice at the end of the day. All right, so if a bug lands on your base coat, what do? Well, you're going to have to let that base fully dry before you go and attempt to fix it. Now, if you try to attempt to pull that bug out while that base is still wet, you're going to create more problems for yourself. You want to let that base fully dry. Then what you're going to do is you're going to grab a 1000 grit sandpaper. Of course, you could use other grits, but you want to use a very fine sandpaper. And what you're going to do is put a soft back pad behind it, behind that little piece of paper, or you could even use a Scotch-Brite pad with that 1000 grit sandpaper, or let's just say it's a 1500 in your case maybe. Put that sandpaper behind that and go ahead and sand away. You don't want to use too much force. You want to use some soft, light sanding scratches in order to get that bug out. Now, once you get the bug out, obviously you're going to have to lay down a little bit of base in that area again, but that's what I recommend. Now, what happens if a bug lands in your clear while it's still wet? Well, in some cases, you can pick them out in your clear. The clear is, I guess you can say, like, it melts into each other, or it melts into itself, I should say. So when you try to pick out a bug, sometimes the clear coat will kind of blend into itself and you won't notice it as much. Also, what you can do is the next time around, go ahead and squirt a little bit of clear on that area as well. And later on, you could go ahead and sand it smooth and you won't even know a bug was there. If you get a bug land on your first coat of base, or let's just say it's going to be very hard to sand out once it's in there. So yeah, you want to try to correct that before you put your clear on, or else that bug is going to be your new ornament on your car. So that is a quick tip for some of you guys that might get some bugs landing in your paint job. That's how you correct it. All right, the last on the list is going to be paint reactions. This one is going to be a long one, so sit tight. All right, so now that we're talking about paint reactions, let's go ahead and break it down for you. Now, most of the time when I see paint reactions, this is because you're using a couple different things, or doing different things that might not necessarily mix well chemically. Now, this could be in form of a 1K product versus a 2K product. Now, with these 1K products, they're a little bit more finicky. But you got to remember, it is a 1K product. It's a lot more softer. It's got softer solvents in it versus a 2K product. The 2K product solvents are going to be much more stronger. And typically when I see a paint reaction, it's because you probably used a spray can primer and then sprayed a 2K product on top. And basically what's happening is those solvents from this paint are attacking the primer. And that's because the 2K solvents are much stronger than the 1K solvents. So this is why you're going to get some fry-ups or some paint reactions. Now, you could even get paint reactions using the same exact product. For example, here, this self-etching, if you paint multiple layers of this, it'll actually attack itself. And what I found out was if you let the product flash in between coats, it ends up attacking itself. With this particular product, I have to spray it wet on wet in order for it to minimize the paint reaction. And this is because it's a self-etching, which means it has a little bit of acid in it, so it tries to etch itself on bare metal. But if you go ahead and spray a coat, you let it dry, and then you go ahead and spray another coat, those acids will attack the lower coats and will actually attack itself and create a fry-up. So with this particular product, with this self-etching from Duplicolor, you want to do it wet on wet. Now, of course, if you're absolutely binding and you have to use a 1K with a 2K product, let me show you a quick tip. If you're, let's just say you're going to be spraying your base, obviously you have it all mixed up, and you're going to be spraying it right on top of a 1K product, spray your first coats lightly. This is going to reduce the amount of solvent pileup on top of these lower end primers, or the 1K primers, I should say, and it's going to lessen the chance of it attacking. If you spray your base right on top of a 1K primer too wet, it could increase the chances of it causing a paint reaction or a paint fry-up. So you want to spray your base as light as possible for the first coat. Watch how it reacts. If it does react, if it doesn't, then you can go ahead and go a little bit heavier on the next coat, and so on and so forth. But if you spray it lightly and it reacts right away, I suggest you stop immediately and correct the problem. So like I said, you want to spray your base on top of a 1K primer, a 2K base, sorry, on top of a 1K primer lightly. You do not want to go too heavy. If you go too heavy, going for that wet look on that first coat of base, you're going to run the risk of getting a fry-up with these 1K products. All right, so another common paint reaction that I've been seeing all pretty much throughout YouTube is Solvent Pop. Now, how you get Solvent Pop is, well, there's multiple ways of getting Solvent Pop, but here are some of the basics. One, you're not letting enough flash time in between coats. You're just piling up that paint, not giving it enough time to fully flash before your next coat. And basically what ends up happening is that top layer dries before the lower ones do. That solvent has nowhere to escape and basically will end up like little blisters or bubbles in your paint job. Or even one other one is putting your part, your freshly painted part, out in the sun. That is going to create solvent pop. You do not want to put your freshly painted panel out in the sun trying to let it dry. I've done it before, trust me. When I was a newbie painting, I stuck my freshly painted panel out in the sun thinking, oh, it's going to dry very, very quickly. No, it ended up solvent popping that whole freaking panel, and I ended up having to repaint. Now, how do you fix solvent pop? In some cases, you can cut and buff them if it's not too bad, but in most cases, it's going to need a repaint. Alrighty guys, so as far as tips on how to paint in your garage or get the best results in your garage, that is all the tips I have. Now you guys know that I've been painting in my garage for a few years now. I think just about every paint job that I have ever done have been in a garage, so I know nothing about spraying in a booth. That might be a little bit more of a learning curve for me, but as far as paint jobs in a garage, yeah, I'm not going to consider myself an expert, but definitely novice or advanced painter in a garage. Now, like I said, there are a couple more tips. I guess you could wet the floor, but like I said, humidity will increase. You could always clean everything. Obviously, the less stuff you have in your garage, that's going to be collecting dust. Obviously, the less dust you're going to have in your panels. Yeah, there's quite a few different tips out there. Hopefully, I put all of them all in one video. If I don't, then I'll probably comment down below and add some. Or if you guys have some tips of your own, go ahead and add them down here in the comments. And I would love to know. Maybe it's something that I can probably put into my paint job. Now, with painting, it is an extreme learning curve. You're not going to get the most perfect paint job the first time around. It's going to take some time. So in order for you to perfect your craft, you're going to need to practice. You're going to need to learn how to do mistakes and how to correct those mistakes. That's the only way to really perfect your craft in painting. So hopefully this doesn't discourage anyone from painting. I want to do the exact opposite. I want to motivate people into painting, especially in their home garage like me. And hopefully I can help you guys out with that. Anyway, guys, that is all from me. Stay spraying, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.